It's been well over a month, but alas, the three of us are back in the same place at the same time.
The three amigos.
Yeah, we're here.
The Talkin' Pop podcast is back at full power, full capacity.
Full capacity.
And we got a lot to talk about this week. We're going to get into Moon Knight episode 3.
Yeah.
This show just keeps getting better and better. But I want to start by discussing the brand new trailer for Stranger Things season 4. Brad, if I can borrow a term that you like using, they're dialing it up to 11 on this season.
Dialing it up to 11, baby.
Oh my God. This trailer is epic.
Yes.
But actually, no but, because it's not. But has a negative connotation. So no but.
Right.
It seems, though, this show's always been like very science fiction.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it seems, though, that we're leaning more into the fantasy element.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, we're getting much more like
we're getting a lot more
Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
Yes, we're getting a lot more Dungeons and Dragons stuff. We're getting a lot more 80s horror feel.
That's what I was going to say.
Horror. Horror. And I'm here for it. Just, I didn't want to over predict before we started seeing like full trailers and things. But when we got the teaser, I think it was back during the Tudum experience. We got a little inside look, a little tease at the new season, which, by the way, 2019 was the last season.
Yeah.
They are very lucky that this group did not shoot up to be like 6'5" and full beard or something like that, because it actually they look relatively, around the same age when we left them. Unless, I don't know, maybe it's supposed to be 3 years later, but to me, they don't look like way different, which I think was a plus. But 2019, I couldn't get over it. I thought maybe 2020 was the last one or whatever. No, it's been 2.5 years, pretty much the entirety of COVID. And now we're starting to, I guess, come out of it. I get a little, and we're getting our prize is we get season 4, but it looks wicked. It looks wicked. We are getting a lot of visuals. There was a lot going on here. So I want to hear, personally, I want to hear what Kelly has to say, because I want to hear where her head's at with this, because I think based on me and Rob, we're a little overexcited.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it looks great. If I'm kind of thinking about, so I had to sort of, to your point, Brad, because it's been so long since I've watched this show, I had to just kind of take a minute and like reabsorb, like, what are my feelings about how this show has gone so far? Like, season 1 is a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite seasons of television.
Yeah,
period.
It's in my opinion, the greatest single season of television of my life, without question.
And that's saying a lot, because it's starring children who you strongly dislike in the television and movie media.
I remember when the trailers came out for this, and I was like, I was like 6 months behind everyone else because I refused to watch it because it featured children.
Okay. Yeah. So you know what? You finally caught on. You finally, saw what all the hype was about. Yeah. I was one of those people that started it and didn't stop watching it until the next day.
Correct.
I didn't go to sleep, like just kept watching it. So that first season is amazing. Second season, I think, left everybody like a little bit. I honestly, like, there's parts of it I can't even remember because it just didn't hit the same for me. Third season, not as strong as the first, but I think it hit back to some of the, like, this show is at its, and it's at its best when it's half, horror upside down, kind of diving into all that. And then also just having fun with like being in the 80s and all that. Like, it's got to strike that balance. So I'm getting that from this new trailer, which is great. I have a bit of a different take than you, Brad. I was like, oh boy, these kids look old now. They look old. They look old to me. Yeah. To me, I was like, oh, they're really big now. They're these are grown men now.
Yeah.
So that felt a little funny.
The thing I was more concerned, they definitely look older. I'm not saying they don't, but it's not like you see some of these teenagers that look like they could be my dad, and I'm like, what? How are you 18? Like you look at LeBron when he was going pro at 18, and he looked like he'd already done his taxes for 20 years, and it's like, what's happening? But no, I just think the overall feel, I like what they're doing here, to just jump in quick, because I also like the fact that the big thing I'm taking from this trailer right off the hop is it seems like they've almost taken like the Harry Potter book/movie take on things, where it's kind of like, we're supposed to be kind of growing up with these guys. So, that first season is very like Goonies and E.T. and all those kind of 80s fun sci-fi kind of movies. And now we're starting to get into like the teenage years, the mid-teens, the late 20s or early 20s and things like that.
Puberty.
Where it's kind of like, well, yeah, you're probably going to see a little bit of jokes about that. I would assume probably
awkward
in the
voices,
show.
awkward young male voices. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the fact that they've clearly kind of shifted tone here a little bit into maybe like more of that Lost Boys, Fright Night, 80s horror film kind of genre, still within keeping with the overall feel of Stranger Things. I really like where this is going. It just kind of seems like it's leveling up. And I also don't know if they're going to go past a season 5. I do think season 5 is already greenlit, as far as I know.
And it's already been confirmed season 5 will be the last season.
Yeah. It is going to be the last season. Okay, so yeah, we're definitely, I think, are going to go. I think there's going to be a fairly significant jump from season 3 to season 4 as far as overall tonality, and I think it's pretty clear in the trailer.
Well, that's the benefit of leaving so much time between seasons as well. Is like, it's not, the last season is not fresh in our mind. The Duffer Brothers confirmed that this is the first time we're going to have an actual big bad. In the previous seasons, like the Upside Down has been the big bad, but it's been like a place. It hasn't really been like a thing. Mm-hmm. And they're adapting. I hope I get this name right. Dungeons and Dragons people, don't kill me if I don't. Arch-Lich Vecna. And I was saying to Kelly before we jumped on here, you guys know that like my thing is like when I learn something new, I do like a deep dive and I like just am a vacuum of information.
You burrow.
Starting from scratch on Dungeons and Dragons is a little much for me, folks. So I didn't do it this time. But I did find out that all the Dungeons and Dragons fans are stoked about the inclusion of this character, and he's widely regarded as one of the best villains in D&D history.
That was my understanding as well. Yeah.
Yes.
So so I'm kind of trying to figure out, because I read, you texted us about that, Rob. I also read it myself. Like, I'm trying to figure out how that comes into this without it being kind of like goofy, because I mean Dungeons and Dragons has always been a part of, like they were playing it in the first season, like it's been there. It's a and it's obviously an 80s thing as well,
and they nicknamed the animals Demogorgons.
Exactly. Right, like, so it's been there. So I was wondering if like maybe this is a Stay Puft Marshmallow Man type
I thought the
scenario.
I thought the exact same thing.
Where it's sort of like
their manifestation.
What is the Rob? You'll know.
The destroyer or whatever. In your mind.
Like the Destructor. Yeah, like that.
Destructor. That's it.
Like that was what I was taking away. Taking away from because I'm like, otherwise, like, how does this even make sense? Like, we've had this like mystical world that, there's been scientists and people all involved in studying it, but it's really an extension of Dungeons and like that wasn't connecting for me until I had that realization of like, oh, this might be a play on the Ghostbusters trope, which I would be totally cool with.
Or they just do what they did with the Demogorgon and just call him Vecna. Like he doesn't.
True. I have no idea what this.
Like that thing is not they just called that thing a Demogorgon.
True.
Well, I do like the fact that there is room for interpretation as far as like what we're saying, like maybe it's what they're manifesting or whatever, or is it that like you know, they've done this kind of a thing with movies before where it's like, it's all true, all the legends of this, like, it's, you know what I mean, like it's like a play on the fact that everybody just thinks it's a board game, but in reality it's actually like some sort of ancient belief system, and that's where the game actually originated from. It's like, sure, Jumanji. But yeah, no, but like actually, like it's kind of like that, where it's kind of like there actually is more to it than just a child's game. Or like we were just deducing, is it more the fact that it's like, is it like they're manifesting it? And what's funny about it is I had that initial thought as well.
Yeah. But
more based on the fact that I thought, don't make me repeat the new baddie's name.
Vecna.
It sounds, his voice kind of has a tonality of Zool. Right? Like, does it not? I thought that it had like a little bit of like that.
I saw an interesting theory on Reddit. I tell you what, Reddit nerds, you guys need to be giving me so much credit, because I come on here every week and I'm like, the Reddit nerds said this.
Yeah. You're representing.
That could be Billy.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, did you notice there's a quick shot of what looks like them in the upside down, and somebody is standing on the RV in the old junk lot or whatever, and it's some young guy ripping on a guitar on top of an old rusted out RV.
This trailer goes off on weird stuff like that. Like, yeah there's some dude just shredding in the upside down.
We are gonna put. We got to get like a freeze frame of that on this, because I kept rewinding to it, and I'm like, I bet you that's Billy.
I don't think it is. And I think we see who that character is later in the trailer. He's like sort of bent over and he's got his fingers out at in front of the camera, and like you see him with the long hair, and he looks like he's like straight out of Wayne's World.
Maybe you might be right. You might be right.
And then you see another guy who has his like eyes are shut, like seemingly like closed, and like it's like a split second shot where he like turns and looks into the camera. That's terrifying.
The main reason, I'm just going to say really quick, the reason why I'm still kind of stuck on it being Billy, I don't even know if this was in the trailer that we got, but there's also been, aside from that, there's been some stills that have come out from set and whatever. And there is a shot at the beginning of the trailer that we all saw where, they're all around Billy's grave. And there is a screenshot or a still that has come out since, and his sister, I'm losing the names right now, but is being levitated in front
she's floating.
Of
That's in the trailer. Yeah.
That is in the trailer. Okay. I couldn't remember, but still, to me, so I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but I do think, given the way Billy did die in season 3, spoiler alert, I guess, I just think that there's going to be more to that character than just, maybe he's gone or whatever. I just think that I think maybe now he's maybe been sucked into the quote unquote underground or upside down, and is kind of been taken over and being used there. So I don't know, but that's my theory.
All I gotta say about that is that if we're getting a resurrection, like an upside down resurrection of Billy, we better be getting an upside down resurrection of Barb. All right.
Yes.
I want to see Barb shredding on a guitar.
Barb. Maybe Vecna's Barb.
Also, yes, that would be another 80s throwback to another 80s horror film in Pet Sematary with the resurrection thing and like everything else. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie growing up. I'm sure some of our listeners have.
Terrifying.
Horrifying.
Yeah, horrifying. Yes.
Horrifying. They tried to redo it, didn't work.
Yeah.
The old one was better.
Two things I want to hit on before we move on to Moon Knight. I'm interested to see where it goes with Hopper. I thought the whole Russian prison thing was really stupid. And like, I want to see where it goes. Yeah. I remember just thinking like, this is so dumb. So, I mean, I hate it. I love me some David Harbour. So, and he's and he looks more badass than this. Like he's ditched his like 80s duster and now he's got like his head shaved and he looks more like action hero Hopper. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And without a doubt, the best part of this trailer for me, without question, you guys have hit on the 80s aesthetic, and that's why people love this show. Yeah. Huge part of that is the music and the reworked version of Separate Ways by Journey in this is so good. I get the goosebumps. I got it right now. I get the goosebumps.
The goosies?
Oh,
I got the goosies?
First of all, that is Journey's best song. I don't care what anybody says. That's Journey's best song. And it's like it just fits Anyone who hasn't listened to it in a while or has never heard it, as soon as you're done listening to this, go listen to it. The song just fits it's so Stranger Things. Like you listen to the opening little like piano part or guitar part, and you're just like, this is perfect. This is so Stranger Things.
Slaps.
I wouldn't be shocked. We should be keeping our eye on the iTunes/Spotify charts to see where that song is. I bet it goes up. I do. 100%. I bet it goes up. Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. We got some good shows coming this summer with this and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and like our plate is full this summer with good shows to watch. Speaking of good shows, how'd you guys like that transition, eh?
I do. Very good. We're getting better at these.
Speaking of good shows, episode 3 of Moon Knight. Kelly, I'm going to open it up to you to start. There were elements of this episode that I really liked. I'm self-conscious saying that because like this is the 3rd week in a row where I'm like, this is really good. I love this. And it's just like nothing of substance to add. So Kelly, over to you.
Okay, I guess I'll sound like you then. Because actually last week I was kind of saying that I thought last week's episode was so for me. This was a much better episode, more enjoyable episode. I thought we got more out of it. I thought we got more background of the story. I think we're getting a little more clarity about Mark Spector, Stephen Grant, and there being a 3rd personality in the mix, if not more.
Jake Lockley.
Exactly. Yeah, that's coming. And we're starting to understand a little bit more like where this is all headed. I felt last week we were kind of wavering a little bit, and I was like, who the hell's Layla? Like, what do we care? Like, I get they were married, but I wasn't feeling connected to the characters. But this week I felt things were moving more towards a plot. I do think, Rob, and we'll talk a little bit more about the details, but I do think we're going to be proven right in that we're heading towards like a CGI mummy fight.
Not necessarily, because one of the things I liked about this, Brad, last week's episode, Kelly and I were saying, I know, but we were hoping that it doesn't evolve into like a Shang-Chi dragon fight with mummies. But one of the things that gave me hope this week,
same thought process.
One of the things that gave me hope this week was that they have like the Egyptian god council, but it's done through their avatars. So it's like human beings who are having this conversation as opposed to like CGI gods all sitting there talking and looking like a computer game. Like it's a video game. I can't believe I just said a computer game. Like, what is this, 1998?
No, it's okay. We've been talking a lot about 80s.
We were just talking about the 80s. Now we've moved into the 90s.
Oh my God.
We're playing like, Minesweeper.
Yeah, computer game. Sitting here playing what was the name of the pinball game that everyone had on their
Spaceball? Was it called
Spaceball? Yes.
If anything else, I was actually just reminiscing the other day about
where you need to insert a screenshot. That's where you need to insert a screenshot of Spaceball.
Right.
Spaceball. We'll have a tournament.
So, anyways, Kelly, that gave me hope that it was done through the avatars.
That's a fair point. I think where I'm coming from is like we're starting to we got a couple of purple lasers, kind of purple beams in the sky, kind of thing, and I was going I was kind of starting to feel like we're heading towards a bit of a CGI fest. But you raise a very good point that the avatars. It does make sense that we may not see it play out that way.
2 things for me. One, I loved the Mark and Steven dynamic in this. I thought it was fantastic.
I thought it was much better than last week.
But and it's like they're finally starting to like find their groove together. And I think Layla is so interesting in that dynamic because you've got Layla and Mark, who are like a divorced couple and have all kinds of baggage, and there's past there, and they're mad at each other. And then you have dorky Steven, who is just like so enamored with this like beautiful woman that he's just gets to like spend time with. And she is obviously taking a liking to Steven because he's so just like innocent. I thought that was fantastic. And the scene where Khonshu and Steven, aka Mr. Knight, are moving the sky is going to be this character's entrance into the broader MCU. Because you're telling me that Dr. Stephen Strange is just sitting in the Sanctum Sanctorum watching the sky do that and not taking notice of it? He absolutely is. So that's my theory.
Listen, I just have to say really quick, because I know we're starting to getting into the crux of the whole episode, but like I know you guys talked about episode 2, and I was kind of in agreement, like, you know, as far as my overall feeling on the show to date. Like I think generally everybody is liking it, and I would take it a step further that even after, you know, episode 2, I was like, I really am enjoying this. I really very much like, you know, some of the other projects that we've talked about, even somewhat recently, like movies or whatever. I'm just like, I missed practical filmmaking, and or even in TV shows now. Like there is a lot of CG in TV shows as well now. But for me, it was just like, I love this. It has this overall feeling, and you really, really felt it in this episode. This kind of throwback action adventure, like Indiana Jones, you know, Mummy, obviously, some of those like easy, you know, picks as far as like what they're connecting to or whatever. Like even, you know, they've even made references to certain, I guess, like real Egyptian lore that they've used in other things like the Mummy, like the Magi and all these kinds of things. And I'm like, I actually know what these are, first of all, just from other movies, the Magi. And I love the fact that I'm a sucker for pulling, you know, truthful, you know, historical elements into filmmaking while still having it be real, while still having it be fantastical and you know, comic book, if you will. But I just have to say, I'm really kind of starting to get into this camp that this might be my favorite thing that the MCU has put out in recent memory. Like one of my absolute favorite things. I'm fully into this show, and I fully love the practical aspect of it, while still using some of that CG stuff. And to your point, I hope they're not necessarily building towards some like, you know, giant CG thing, because I really like where it is right now. I really, really like where it is right now.
Yeah, and the fact that we mentioned this last week, the fact that it's in Cairo and in London, and like really sort of separates it from the rest of the MCU. Although, to my point that I just made about Khonshu moving the sky. Well, yeah, Eternals, that's right. But like, it's not just another show in New York. Yeah. And like, listen,
that's kind of been my thing from the get, is that, you know, they're trying to expand this whole world and trying to get into some of these deeper characters. I just don't know that, you know, in some of these MCU shows or whatever, I don't really know that they've necessarily hit the way I wanted them to. And I'm just really enjoying the cast, the way, the stylistically, what they've chosen to do with it, and just the overall feel that I'm getting from it. It feels like a throwback. It feels like a throwback action adventure that you would go see in like the mid 2000s or back. And while still having the more modern day technology to do some of the things that maybe they couldn't do before. So for me, I'm going to keep doing it until he proves me wrong. Ethan Hawke and Oscar Isaac are just killing it on this show for me. I just think the contrast between the two of them, and even in the scene where they were in the pyramid of Giza, and they were having that trial essentially.
That was so funny when he's walking in there and Steven's like, "We're entering it. We're walking inside the pyramid of Giza."
Yeah. But I love the writing for this show, because I do think that it's gotten into like some proper acting, and you are seeing Oscar Isaac make the transition between the two characters in front of you, instead of it just being like him in the mirror or him in the mirror. You're like actually seeing him like drop out of it and then like pick it right back up. I'm like, these are some like legitimate acting chops that it's like it could so easily be goofy, and the fact that it's landing seriously to me is such a win, number one. But then number two, like we were talking about, you know, maybe after episode 1, we were kind of, or even episode 2, we were talking about the action level, and we were kind of going, you know, it's not necessarily really on par with what we were necessarily hoping for with like the original Daredevil, things like that. But I gotta say, I actually, after episode 3, it's obviously not gonna, I don't think they're ever gonna go that level like we talked about. But I just think that it's actually more than I was even expecting after episode 2. There was that whole fight scene outside of the sarcophagus was pretty violent.
Yeah, it was definitely more violent.
It was a little more hard hitting than other entries into the MCU, and like
for sure,
we're still not seeing bloodshed. We're seeing people being stabbed. I was actually pretty surprised.
There was blood and broken arms facing the wrong way, and like
the part where Khonshu's like hold him over the ledge, and he's like he's just a kid, and he's like he'll talk, and then he sacrifices himself. So I'm with you guys. I love the direction this is taking. We're halfway through now. I think we are going to get the third sort of personality of Jake Lockley coming in at some point, and then we're going to see Oscar Isaac balancing 3 different roles. I'm really, really excited.
So I know we don't want to overstay our welcome this week, but I did want to just circle back to something that you and I talked about last week, Rob, when we were talking about who's the real guy. And so I think we actually are like misinterpreting it a little bit. Like, I think it's, we knew that he had like a personality disorder. That's already something we knew going in. But I think framing it through that lens, like asking who's the real guy isn't even totally an accurate question to ask, because I think they're all like iterations. Like, the way that I'm viewing it is, I think Mark Spector is probably who was born into this world now, is sort of my view of this. But I think he's created these other elements of himself, naming them different things, to accomplish things that he as Mark Spector can't. Like, you have Stephen Grant, who's like helping him through these like intellectual problems that he's being faced with, and reading the hieroglyphics and stuff. And then also it's interesting how it's almost like he's created Stephen Grant in order to like almost like create a new connection with Layla. Because like him and Layla, like there was the scene in the last episode where like he's like, that's my favorite poet, and she's like, it's my favorite poet. And like, and in this one, you can actually kind of start seeing the love connections starting a little bit between Stephen and Layla. I don't know. I felt like there were a few glances exchanged where I was like, so it's almost like, it's like Mark knows that he can't be there for Layla or have the right relationship. So he's like created Stephen Grant to like fill that gap. It's really interesting. Like, I don't think they're polar different people. I think they're
you're
iterations on the same person.
They're shards of each other. I think you're bang on too. I think you know what? Because I've been thinking of roughly around the same thing. You've put it very eloquently, for sure, Kelly. I think that, for me, I was trying to like circle into something, because there have been other iterations of movies and things where they've dealt with split personalities as recent as McAvoy in the movie Split, where he actually had multiple personalities, and they get into like some of the psychology of it as far as, when traumatic things happen, like he had this mental way of trying to protect himself by splitting off these personalities in order to, protect him from the trauma of like what's been going on. So even for me, like based on also what you just said, when he was kind of selected by Khonshu, it might have been like an incredibly dramatic situation that he was put into, that he might have actually just created this in order to protect himself from the trauma of the whole situation. And
he owes something to Khonshu like that. So I'm sure we'll find out more about what exactly that is. And as everyone's trying to find Amit's tomb. So I think that's where we're going. And like I said, if we're going to get a god fight, I hope it's a god fight through avatars and not CGI gods punching each other.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, it's been a few weeks since I've mentioned it, but I wanted to just give it a quick shout out before we sign off for this week. This coming Monday, April the 18th, The Batman Baby, available on streaming, HBO Max in America, Crave here in Canada.
Rob, are you going to watch?
Oh,
are you going to watch it?
Am I ever? Am I ever? You know what? I saw it 3 days in a row, and I was like, there was a part of me that wanted to go back for a fourth time. And then I was like, no, this thing's going to be available on streaming relatively soon. And then I'm going to watch it over and over and over again.
You paid your dues. You paid your dues.
But I really hope, we don't have a lot of time here. So I want to just like hit on this really quickly and we can do a deeper dive at some other time. But I really hope that this is the future. Like this is where we're going, where they're available on streaming services not too long after the theatrical release.
I think it's the right way to go. I think just there's so much turnover as far as movies anyways now. I think that's, they really started to set the bar when they released The Irishman a few years ago with Scorsese, because he really kind of laid the gauntlet down that he didn't want this to go straight to the streaming service. The streaming service did want it, and they came to an agreement and landed in the middle that after whatever it was, 2, 3, 4 weeks, they were going to go straight in. Instead of, the old days where it was like when something finally left the theater after like a year, there was months that you had to wait before the movie came out. I think this is a much better way to kind of appease everybody.
Mm-hmm. Without question.
I think it's the right thing to do.
Without question.
Yeah.
All right, guys. I think that's going to do it for us this week. And then we'll be back next week to talk about episode 4.
And more.
And
We're
more.
not sure
and beyond.
And whatever new trailer drops next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or a computer
whatever
game.
Whatever else tickles our fancy.
Yeah, come on back.
Tickles our fancy. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, for checking us out this week. If you like what you see, hit that like and subscribe button below. Spread the word. Tell your friends. We really appreciate it. Also, if you're listening to the audio version of the show, hit that follow button. Leave a 5-star review. Every little bit helps. We'll see you guys next week.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.